Today in Unsolved, Florida, we are talking about a young mother who was brutally killed in her own home during what police first suspected was a robbery. Let's go back 35 years ago to Jacksonville, Florida. Melissa Taylor Ellison, who was known to her friends and family as Missy, was only 20 years old when she was murdered in her own home 3 days after Christmas on December 28, 1987. Her 13-month-old daughter Casey was found alive on the couch in the living room surrounded by pillows. Missy and her husband Mark had recently separated, and she stayed in their home. One of Missy's friends, Charlene Boger, and Charlene's boyfriend, Wayne Contreras, moved in to help cover the cost of living there. The four people total lived in a mobile home in Taylor's trailer park, which was owned by Missy's parents, the Taylors. The evening before her murder, around 11:30 p.m., Missy spoke to her mother on the phone. According to old newspaper reports about the murder, Missy told her mother that she was scared, but she wouldn't say why. Missy had had a headache, took some Tylenol, and Casey was in bed with her. Missy's mother offered to come over and help with the baby, but she declined, saying that the baby was asleep and she was going to fall asleep as soon as she hung up the phone. Missy's parents only lived about 1,000 feet down the road. Trigger warning, this is a little graphic. Missy was found in a kneeling position with her head resting on the bed. She was bleeding from her nose, mouth, and ears and had charcoal marks on the right side of her face. Wood chips from the log were scattered all over Missy's room. Charlene called Missy's mother and 911, but by the time paramedics arrived, she was gone. Sadly, her family did see her in this position. Charlene told officers she woke up in the night because she heard Missy's baby crying. When she got up out of her room, Charlene found Casey on the couch in the living room instead of on the bed where Missy had told her mother just a few hours prior that's where she was. Charlene then told police that she tried to bring Casey into Missy's room where the door was cracked open, but someone inside the room pushed the door shut in her face. So Charlene fed Casey and then ended up falling asleep on the couch with her. According to the police report, Charlene stated that she thought Missy's estranged husband, or perhaps a date, was in the room and didn't want to be disturbed. Charlene then woke up to the loud noise of the back door slamming. At the same time, her boyfriend Wayne was in the hallway half asleep and said someone had just walked into his room and shined a flashlight in his face, waking him up. Together, they went to the back of the house and found Missy in her bedroom dead around 4 a.m. When the police arrived, they noticed the charged log near the front door, which was the opposite direction that the killer had left the home. Police stated that she was attacked and beaten in her sleep with that charred log taken from the fireplace. The attacker broke in through a window at the end of the mobile home near Missy's bedroom, or possibly Missy's bedroom. At the time in 1987, there were a string of burglaries in local trailer parks. However, nothing was seemingly taken from the home and no sexual assault was committed. The police asked her parents to look around and see if anything was missing, and they noticed 2 pictures from the mantle were missing. Both of the pictures were Missy at the beach. This is a duplicate of one of those pictures. The detective on Missy's case says it's unclear what happened to the pictures, if they were taken by her killer or if they were taken by an investigator back in 1987 and lost. The only thing else that was taken from the home was a bathing suit and a set of keys to the home. The investigator did note that the house was well taken care of and very clean. Maybe the biggest clue of all about Missy's killer was a 911 call where the caller referred to Missy's murder and said, "I'm sorry, I had to do it." Now, there's no other details released about the 911 call except for it was placed the night after Missy's murder, so not the same night. If you read this clip, Ed Spears, a neighbor, said he had heard loud voices during an argument around 2 a.m. and then a vehicle spun away at 2:30 a.m. There were unknown tire tracks on the back patio and the driveway of the mobile home. Police also have mentioned a charred handprint on Missy's arm, shoe prints in the house. I always like to share my brief thoughts on cases, and first of all, I assumed no one was home when Missy was murdered, but no, 2 grown adults and her infant daughter were home. I mentioned earlier that Charlene stated she heard Casey crying and fed her and took care of her. Was this normal? I know they hadn't been in the home long, but they were really close friends. She had only been separated for 2 weeks from her husband, so when Charlene said maybe it was a date, was that something normal that Missy was doing, bringing guys home in the middle of the night? Of course, it's suspicious that her and her husband had only been separated for 2 weeks before her murder, but there's nothing in articles that suggest he had anything to do with it. No comments from the family that are saying, hey, her ex-husband He did go on to raise their daughter, and he gave only one interview from what I can find, stating that he wants her case solved just as much as her family, especially for their daughter. He and Missy were somewhat arguing that evening when he returned Casey to her. At least that's what Missy told her parents. She said that Mark was drunk when he dropped Casey off, but he disputed this, saying that Missy was in a bad mood. He did not want to argue, so he was short with her and just left to avoid any drama. Mark went home after leaving Missy's house and told police he fell asleep around 10:30, where he stayed sleeping until he got the call about her murder around 6 a.m. from his younger brother. It appears his alibi can't be confirmed since he was home alone. Mark did go to Missy's parents' house immediately after getting the call. Many people think it is strange that the baby was on the couch surrounded by pillows and that the killer left the baby unharmed in that position. It shows that the killer cared about the baby, perhaps like a father would, or Charlene is lying about the whole event, or really he just ignored or moved the baby. What makes me curious is Charlene said she found Missy around 4 a.m. when she awoke to the loud slamming of the door, which her boyfriend also woke up to. But the neighbor earlier commented that the arguing in the vehicle left around 2 a.m. The weapon was confirmed to be from their fireplace, like I said, so if Charlene was in the living room, which is where I'm guessing the fireplace was, you'd think she'd hear someone walk through, but maybe she didn't. The police didn't say where the shoe prints were in the home, just that there were foreign shoe prints in the home. The fact that two grown adults did not hear Missy getting beaten to death with a charred log of wood is kind of crazy to me. The coroner did say that Missy likely died in her sleep and never saw it coming. But then why did the neighbor hear arguing unless it was Charlene and Wayne after they had killed Missy? We're assuming that Charlene and Wayne weren't under the influence because at least one of them was up with the baby, and police probably would have noticed that. There was this news article about two people being killed on the same night with close proximity, but they seem to be completely unrelated. Police do not know who killed Missy or why, but believe it was someone close to her. Missy's parents had the trailer destroyed and removed from the park because they could not bear to see it every day. This was about 2 years after her murder. I wish we knew what more evidence police had, if there's anything that could be tested using today's technology. I have not read anywhere that Mark, Charlene, or Wayne have been cleared of suspicion by the police. I think there's a lot of ways this case could go. Missy's family has been consistent in the news trying to bring her justice, as well as her daughter Casey, who is now 36 years old. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this case, the estranged husband, roommates, a random stalker, a bad date. Let me know in the comments below. Missy's case was submitted to us by a follower, so if you have a case you think needs more coverage, please send us a request. I want to thank Project Cold Case for having such a well-written article on their website about Missy's murder and all the work that they do. If you have any information on the unsolved murder of Melissa Ellison, you can remain anonymous and possibly be eligible for a $3,000 reward by calling First Coast Crime Stoppers at 866-845-TIPS.